This video contains spoilers for The Suicide Squad. James Gunn seems to be at it again. He recently said that Peacemaker will likely be getting a second season, which is very exciting because Season 1 has been great thus far. But, more closely linked to this video, James Gunn also said that he has another character from The Suicide Squad that he'd like to make a spin-off series for. So, in this video, I'm going to try and guess which character from the Suicide Squad is most likely to get a spin-off series. I'm going to be sticking to the main squad for this video, and I'll put them in order of least to most likely to get a spin-off series. There will also be a bonus section with one or two more characters this series could be about. Also, please like and subscribe. I've heard it's good to say that at the beginning as opposed to the end of the video. Without further ado, last place. 7th place, Peacemaker. Peacemaker is automatically in last place because he already has a spin-off show. It's a great show, but I'd hope the new series wouldn't just be another series about Peacemaker. Anyway, here's the next pick, which is kind of more the real last place because Peacemaker doesn't really count, but whatever. 6th place, Rick Flag. I really don't think Rick Flag would get a series for a couple of reasons. First off, he's very, dead. So if this was a Rick Flag show, it would probably be a prequel, because otherwise it would just be, I don't know, his funeral. Secondly, while Rick Flag is an interesting character, I don't think he'd be a good leading man. I think he's better in ensembles. I don't have a lot to say about Rick Flag, but I don't think he'd be a good lead for a show. 5th place, Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is a good and interesting character, and she could be a great lead, but I don't think making a Harley Quinn show would be the right move, mostly due to saturation. As opposed to every other member of the main squad in the Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn has been in other media. The DCEU's Harley Quinn has already been in 3 different movies: 2016's Suicide Squad, 2021's The Suicide Squad, and she even had her own spin-off movie, Birds of Prey, and the extravagantly long title of Harley Quinn. Not to mention that there's already a Harley Quinn series on HBO Max, though that one is animated and not set in the DCEU. To add to that, she's also the only character from the main squad of the Suicide Squad that I could see returning. I think she's a great character, but for a spin-off series, I think that James Gunn would rather focus on a character that would otherwise not be seen in the DCEU again. Also, in an interview with Deadline, James Gunn said the Suicide Squad spin-off would be less of a comedy like Peacemaker. I don't think a presumably more serious show would be best suited for Harley Quinn. With all that in mind, I'm pretty confident the show will not be a Harley Quinn show. 4th place, Polka Dot Man. I'm going to start off by saying that Polka Dot Man is one of my favorite characters from the Suicide Squad, second only to King Shark, and that a show revolving around him could work. However, there are a few things about the character of Polka Dot Man that would make a Polka Dot Man series unlikely. First off, he's, well, dead. So, since he's dead, the only way to do a show about him would be to do a prequel, or just pretend like he didn't die when he was crushed by a giant starfish. I don't think James Gunn would do a prequel because he's never really done one before. That's not to say he couldn't do a prequel. I'm sure he could. It's just that I don't think he'd be interested in making a show about a guy who the audience has already seen die. The second reason I think a Polka Dot Man series would be unlikely is because his story is complete. The Suicide Squad was his redemption, so anything before that would probably end with him becoming depressed and hating himself. And that also doesn't feel like something James Gunn would do. I don't think a Polka Dot Man show couldn't work, thus why it's so high on the list, but I don't think that's the direction James Gunn would want to go in. Before we get to the top 3, I'd like to kindly ask that you like and subscribe, and I'd like to know which The Suicide Squad character you think deserves a TV show. I'd also like to quickly mention that I have a few videos about Peacemaker already on my channel, if that would be of any interest to you. Also, I'm probably going to continue talking about Peacemaker in videos releasing throughout the next few weeks as the final episodes of Peacemaker Season 1 air. That's all I've got time for. Now back to your regularly scheduled program. 3rd place, Bloodsport. I think a Bloodsport series would work pretty well because he's an interesting character. Off the top of my head, I can't come up with any possible stories involving him, but I'm not James Gunn, so that doesn't really mean anything. I feel like a Bloodsport show could be really interesting if the show was able to deliver a compelling character arc for Bloodsport. And that's where my main issue comes with the Bloodsport series. His arc has been completed. His character arc was the main character arc of the Suicide Squad. He went from being a guy who was closed off from everyone around him and thought he was a bad person, to a guy who had opened up and trusted his squad, and a guy that saw the good in himself when he risked death to save his city from Starro's attack, even though that wasn't required for the mission. My point is, great stories are often about character arcs, and I don't know what arc Bloodsport could have after his arc in the Suicide Squad. Also, Bloodsport is played by Idris Elba, and while Idris Elba does a fantastic job with the character, he's also a very popular actor, so I'm not sure he'd have the time to film an 8-episode season of television. I know he's done TV shows before, but that was before he was as famous as he is right now. I still think a Bloodsport series is more likely than any of the other shows I've mentioned thus far, but I don't think the series will be a Bloodsport series. Second place, King Shark. Yes, you heard that right. King Shark is the character I feel is second most likely to get a spin-off series. Why, you may ask? Well, mostly because King Shark is my favorite character from the Suicide Squad and I want more King Shark content, but also I think the character is primed for a solo story. Well, solo story in the same way Peacemaker is a solo story. I think King Shark would be a great choice for a spin-off series for 3 reasons. First off, he's already a popular character, so there's a built-in audience. King Shark is a fan favorite, so I'm sure pretty much anyone who's seen the Suicide Squad would be excited about a King Shark show. Secondly, there's a clear story. In the Suicide Squad, King Shark is a sad boy. He doesn't really feel accepted, as evidenced by the scene where everyone went into that club and Nanaue had to stay in the van, and he looked at all the people out the window, talking to each other, being happy, and Nanaue just wanted that. He wanted to belong, and I think a show about King Shark trying to belong could be heartfelt and emotional. Also, it seems perfectly James Gunn to make a very emotional and character-driven show about a shark man. The third reason I think a King Shark show could happen is because the actors who play King Shark aren't busy. In an interview with Screen Rant, the guy who did the on-set acting for King Shark, Steve Agee, has stated that he would be willing to return to the character. But what about Sylvester Stallone, the guy who voiced King Shark, you may ask? If I said Idris Elba would be too busy for a series, why wouldn't Sylvester Stallone, one of the most famous actors in recent history, be too busy for a series that would probably take months to film? Well, Sylvester Stallone wouldn't actually be on set for months because he only voices the character. If HBO and James Gunn went on with the King Shark series, they'd probably only have to get Stallone for a few weeks at most, because all he'd have to do is record King Shark's lines. With all that in mind, I think a King Shark show isn't out of the realm of possibility in the slightest. But even with all that said, I don't think King Shark is the most likely choice for a spin-off series, thus why he's in second place, not first. Though I have contemplated putting him in first place. Anyway, here's my choice for first place. First place, Ratcatcher 2. This really shouldn't have been a surprise. When I made this list, I knew Ratcatcher 2 would be in first place. And again, I have 3 different reasons as to why. First off, she was the heart, and the favorite character for many, of the Suicide Squad. In which case, there already is a built-in audience for this show. Although most people, myself included, didn't like Peacemaker after the Suicide Squad and ended up loving the Peacemaker show. Anyway, people already care about this character, more so than most of the characters from the Suicide Squad. And unlike King Shark, people don't just like Cleo or think she was funny, they cared about what happened to her, and were probably incredibly happy that James Gunn didn't go with the version of the script in which she died. People are genuinely interested in what happens to this character, which is a very good reason to give a character a series. Not always a great reason, but when the writer actually cares, it usually turns out well. Secondly, she has a lot of potential for future stories. In the Suicide Squad, Cleo didn't really have much of a character arc, so she still has basically as much potential as ever for a compelling arc. In fact, I'd say she has the most story potential out of everyone I've previously mentioned, because the Suicide Squad mostly explored her backstory and personality. And again, unlike King Shark, there's a lot of different stories that would work for her character, none that are immediately clear to me, but there are a lot, probably more than any other character I've mentioned. Thirdly, the actress who played Cleo, Daniela Melchior, I hope I pronounced that right, has openly stated that she'd like to return to the character. Also, she's assumedly not as busy as Idris Elba probably is, so I'm sure scheduling wouldn't be an issue. I don't have much else to say here, so I'll just move on to the bonus section. Bonus section. The show I want the most would probably be a King Shark or Ratcatcher 2 show, so why not just combine the two and have it be a team-up? They'd probably continue to be friends after the events of the Suicide Squad, so why not? They could even get Idris Elba for an episode. He might be too busy for a starring role, but I'm sure he'd be up for an episode or two. Also, I'd like to mention that James Gunn has specifically pointed out that the detachable kid was never confirmed to be dead. Not saying he'll get a show, but why else specifically point out that he didn't for sure die? Just saying. Conclusion. In conclusion, I hope for a King Shark show, but a Ratcatcher show is the most likely in my eyes. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll hopefully see you in my next video, which will probably be about Peacemaker episode 6 if I'm being honest.